Hi kids, I am Michael Bain. This is Triggered, of course coming to you from the Dragon House Studios at the secret hidden bunker in the Rocky Mountains. And you can find us on michaelbain.tv and soon lots of other places. Today we're going to talk a little bit about revolvers from the SHOT Show. And before we do, we're going to start here with this Ruger. We're going to talk about the Colt Python. We're going to talk about a couple of others. But it's interesting in that the revolver renaissance isn't reflected in sales. Remember, we talked about that a little bit last year. However, the companies are filling pretty much every niche that they can find, even the revolver niche. So you've seen this guy before. This is the Ruger Super GP 100 9mm. You got a sneak peek of it if you've been watching Shooting Gallery this season. The great Dave Alasso had one of the very first prototypes, and we shot that and filmed it. I've started shooting this gun. This is Ruger's flat-out competition revolver. The first iteration was in 38-357. This one is in 9mm. It runs off moon clips. This one has 8 rounds. And it's an interesting gun. It's an excellent gun to shoot. A lot of the comments on it have been, wow, you know, that's butt ugly. No, it's a competition revolver, and as a competitor, I've been involved in competition for many, many years, and after a while, you get used to not thinking about aesthetics because you carve up grips, you scratch up the gun, lots of things like that. So from a competitor standpoint, you look at this and say, this is a brilliant design. The extension of the barrel back in here means that the 9mm bullet doesn't have as far to go until it hits the forcing cone. A barrel shroud is cut out. It balances extremely well. I'm really looking forward to shooting this gun. Right now, the big drawback is I can't find a scope mount, a red dot sight mount. There's red dot sight mounts for Red Hawks, and there's red dot sight mounts for GP 100s. But there isn't yet a red dot sight mount that will fit the Super GP 100. I am reaching out to Cylinder and Slide Shop on that one. The other gun that is in fact beautiful is Colt's reintroduction of the Python. And as soon as I got to media day at the range, kind of funny, in Las Vegas, my friends from Colt, I walked in, my friends from Colt grabbed me, and sort of carried me to the Colt booth. It's like, you got to shoot this, Michael, you got to shoot this. I was not able to go to the Colt event out at Gunsight, so this would be my first time to actually shoot the new Colt Python. The Colt Python is a revolver of legend. It has always been considered maybe the single best revolver ever made. You may argue on the Smith & Wesson Smith & Wesson Model 29 Dirty Harry gun, but certainly the Python has always been the gold standard of revolvers. And over the years, I have talked to Colt engineers about the Python, and in each case, what they told me was it was prohibitively expensive to manufacture. Much like early 1911s, the Python came from a time where handwork was much less expensive. The polishing on the gun, the classic Colt amazing bluing on the gun, came from the fact that they had some of the best polishers on earth. So it was kind of a surprise when Colt decided to go forward, although once they successfully introduced the Cobra and the King Cobra, and those met with huge market success, well, the Python was not that far behind. So you can see shooting it, it has a classic Python trigger, which is maybe the best trigger on a revolver ever. It breaks differently than a Ruger, it breaks differently than a Smith & Wesson. It breaks farther forward. And as we talked about on the podcast and when we were talking about SHOT Media Day, I spent time with the engineers going over the trigger charts and graphs on where the trigger breaks on old Pythons, where the trigger breaks on new Pythons. Does it stack? Does it not stack? Key point about the Python, is it expensive? Yes, $1,550, less than the $2,000 or $3,000 that they estimated would cost. I suspect that's because modernized tooling, modernized design. Why did Colt go forward with it? A little bit of gun nerd stuff here. The baseline changed. For years, the focus on revolvers was on the small revolvers. So like the Smith & Wesson J-frame, the Ruger LCR, and those revolvers were the bulk of revolvers sold in the United States. What we've seen is an increase in price and quality. This guy here, once again, $1,500 range on the Ruger for the competition revolver. So the Colt at $1,500 for $499, $1,499, $1,550, somewhere in that range is not off the charts. A lot of that is because of the acceptance of higher prices. Of course, the Kimber K6 series, this guy right here, we're going to talk about in the second segment, they came in at about $1,000, between $800 and $1,200. Smith & Wesson Performance Center guns, their top-end guns, once again, at that $1,000 or higher line. In fact, Smith & Wesson hunting revolvers, there's a new introduction on the 460 Magnum this year, is almost $2,000, $1,800. So the market accepted the higher price revolvers, which allowed Colt to come in with the Python. So 6-inch barrel, 4 1/4 inch barrel. The reason it's a 1/4 inch has something to do with Canada. Who knows? Import restrictions, blah, blah. But it was a great gun to shoot, a smooth gun to shoot. The trigger pull, absolutely flawless gun to shoot. Where am I going to get one? I don't know. I don't know. I have always shot, I've been a Smith & Wesson guy and then became a Ruger guy. As you know, Ruger's a sponsor, to be clear. But I've shot a lot of Rugers, I've shot a lot of Smith & Wesson. I've competed with Ruger, I've competed with Smith & Wesson. And I'm used to the way they feel. And the Colt does feel different. I talked to my friend Mark Rettel, who's essentially a factory shooter for Colt and works R&D and engineering with them, and asked him if he was going to shoot it in competition. And he said, yes, I think so. So the Colt Python, that was the big surprise. Beautiful gun, buy it now. Just like I told you with 10 millimeter, you want a gun that maybe is a niche gun, and you say, I'll pick it up next year. Don't mean it's going to be here next year. So Python will probably stick around, but now would be a good time to get one. I also looked at the Armscor guns, the Armscor revolvers coming in from the Czech Republic. And for the price, these are like $400 or $500 guns, which you see down all the way to high 300s and mid 400s. These are excellent choices of gun. The 357, I shot the 357. It reminded me a lot of the Colt Detective Special, if you would. A little bit rough on the trigger pull, but that's to be expected in that price point. Generally, we look at revolvers, unless you're looking at the top end of revolvers, you're also looking at a trigger job. But it shot well also. Also, the little 9mm from Armscor, once again, Armscor is a sponsor. The Tuasin family are friends of mine. But the 9mm revolver was really excellent. Once again, runs off moon clips. And it was a lot like shooting a .22. I think it was a super little gun. So if you're in the market for a good defensive revolver, take a look at Armscor. We'll be back with more revolvers when Triggered returns. This week's Triggered is brought to you by Tandem Cross, making good .22s even better. Lucid Optics, on target, under budget. Franklin Armory, some of the most innovative firearms in America. Cimarron, King of the Cowboys, and of course, Lipsy's and their great gun of the month. Welcome back to Triggered, where we're talking about revolvers that we saw at the SHOT Show. You've seen this gun before, of course. It's a Taurus Raging Hunter. This is my gun. It is .44 Magnum Taurus Raging Hunter. I have said I think it's maybe the best beginning handgun hunting gun in the entire world. Taurus upped the ante with a .454 Casull version of this gun. Now, Taurus wasn't at Media Day. However, I was able to shoot the .454 Casull in prototype. I had to sign an NDA that wouldn't tell anybody. But I shot it in prototype. I put a lot of rounds through it. This is a good platform for a .454. The supported barrel, it takes some of the edge off of it. It's got good weight. And the other thing is Taurus grips are some of the best grips in the business for heavyweight revolvers. I would like to also do the caveat with .454 Casull. If you're not used to shooting those things, stay with the .44 Magnum. 44 Magnum will get you 90% of the .454 Casull, and it won't give you carpal tunnel syndrome, which is a huge plus. Ask me how I know. The other Taurus introduction was the 856 Defender. And I spent a lot of rounds with the 856 snubs, the 2-inch snubs. Myself and Rob Garrett down in Georgia at one of the Taurus ranges put literally hundreds of rounds through them. Rob Garrett, of course, the god of snubbies, knows a huge amount about snubby revolvers, and both of us were impressed with that platform. Well, the Defender, 3-inch barrel instead of 2-inch barrel. Really nice set of grips on it. So essentially a slightly upped ante. And I thought that was a pretty good idea. You'll also see, in terms of upping antes, Charter introduced a new caliber in this gun, Charter Arms. This is, of course, their professional model in 7-shot 32 H&R Magnum. And for this year, they have, I think, a 5-shot in 38 or 6-shot in 38 Special. So they moved up to 38 Special 357 on this platform, which was a good move. Kimber, we've talked about the K6 many times, and once again, not at Media Day, so I didn't have a chance to shoot the gun. This is my Kimber, a 3-inch Kimber. If you want a target version, cool. 4 inches, adjustable barrel. You can actually, it's got a hammer on, it's not a hammerless gun. I'd kind of like to come back a little and talk more about this gun because I like it a lot. Competition revolvers are kind of super things. You should be aware if you say, I'm going to buy this gun, I'm going to go into competition. It sort of has an issue much like a semi-automatic where you say, I'm going to go into competition, I now need 10 magazines instead of 3. Well, this runs on moon clips. It's an 8-shot 9mm. It runs on moon clips. The 9mm rounds need to be in the moon clips. Ruger includes 3 moon clips with this. However, let's be honest, if you're going to do this in competition, you're going to need 20. Moon clips get bent. When you're ejecting them, boom, you drop them on the ground, you know, you're moving from position to position shooting. Sooner or later, the range officer is going to step on your moon clips. Typically, TK Custom is sort of the state of the art in moon clips, and they are around $40 to $50 for 10. You're going to need 20. You also probably need a moon clip loader because with this revolver, it's hard to get that 8th round in the moon clip with your thumb. You need something to be able to push that in. There's a number of them. TK Customs has a couple of them. Revolver Supply has some excellent moon clip loaders. In shooting this gun, I mean, this is a gun that when you take it to the range, you don't want to stop shooting it. It's just fun. It's just, there's not much recoil off a 9mm on a revolver this heavy, and it's fairly heavy. It's accurate. I didn't do any off-the-bench accuracy testing. I will. I was shooting, I think, Federal 150 grain Syntac, which are essentially a match load. Those red bullet ones look like lipstick. In all likelihood, since I will be competing with this revolver, I will build the 9mm loads for it because this is a case where, honestly, yes, depending on what you're shooting, for example, if you're shooting ICOR, the International Confederation of Revolver Enthusiasts, I've shot their world championships multiple times. You've seen them on Shooting Gallery multiple times. Their power floor is 125. Of course, their power is determined by multiplying the weight of the bullet by the velocity, and it has to come to 125,000. So what you want is an accurate bullet, and you want a bullet that's not too much over that power floor. Keeping in mind that temperature affects velocity and altitude affects velocity. I designed a 9mm round for where I live now at 6,000 feet, and I take it to, say, Florida, where there's more humidity and we're sea level. It's going to change that gun. You always have to be aware of that when you're tailoring custom loads. But again, my inclination is to build the load for this gun. I suspect I'll be using 147 grain bullets. My inclination also is to use a coated bullet or a jacketed bullet. It depends on which works best. Coated bullets now, like the Federal Syntac, they've got multiple generations. They got a lot of years in them. They're very good. They keep the leading down. In the old days, we all shot the cheapest lead bullets we could get, and then we spent hours chiseling the lead out of the barrel because it plated the barrel. So we're looking more for the jacketed bullets or the coated bullets. The second advantage in competition is they don't smoke as much. They're not as dirty, they don't smoke as much. That's kind of an important issue when you're firing multiple shots. If your round smokes a lot and you're pulling bang, 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 all of a sudden you find yourself not being able to quite see to the next target. So I'm looking forward to building up a 9mm round with this. I haven't done that in a while, and typically though, You build rounds for the gun. When I've competed before, I've typically competed with 38 Special. And I built up 38 Special rounds to run out of my competition guns. I've always also competed with 44 Special, 44 Russian, which is basically self-abuse. You don't want to do that. It's an interesting and long story. We documented it on Shooting Gallery. Every so often you do an experiment that simply doesn't work. That didn't work. So this is not something I have to experiment with. This is 100% on the gun. What I'm going to change on it, these are magnificent Hogue grips. I mean, these things are beautiful. However, for competition, virtually everybody uses what they call the Hogue big butt grips. You know why? They got a big butt. I will probably change this gun out for those grips because it gives you, number one, it puts your hand in the position you want it in the moment you grab the gun. Number two, this great big butt, if you sand that great big butt flat and you put some non-stick on it, if you have to drop down and go prone, it'll sit flat on the ground. It'll give you a little bit of advantage. Gun already has an excellent trigger pull. I would like to take maybe a pound or two off this trigger pull, which I probably could do with Wolf Springs. Single action is absolutely perfect. However, I will tell you the only time I've used single action in a competition is for 50-yard standards, where I'm lying on the ground, I cock the gun, bang. So that gives you an idea of what's going on in revolver world. There's still others out there. We'll stay on top of that because I'm kind of a revolver type guy, as you well know. I'm Michael Bain. This is Triggered. Find us on michaelbain.tv. And as I said, we're going to have some really big announcements on Triggered coming up as we move into spring soon. Oh God, soon. We will see you Wednesday morning next week.